Hey y'all, I'm your host, Kennedy Brady. That's Kennedy like the president and Brady like the bunch. And since you're here, you can go ahead and like and subscribe. And after that, you can call me Ken just like the Barbie. And this is Ken Ray B. If there is one thing as a Christian woman, especially a Southern Christian woman, that you're going to hear, it's wait for your Boaz. Okay? Don't settle for broke ass, crazy ass, lazy ass. Just wait. Wait for your Boaz. And let me tell you, after reading the book of Ruth, part of me, I get it. Part of me, I really, really don't understand why people say wait for your Boaz, because to me, it's pretty obvious who made the first really big initial I'm into you kind of move. Okay. And spoiler alert, it wasn't Boaz. So for this week's episode, we're going to be talking about none other than the epic love story of Ruth and Boaz. So remember last week, or maybe a couple weeks ago? Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago. Maybe it was 3 weeks ago. Don't judge me. Anyway, it's like a few weeks ago that we talked about King Eglon and his like horrendously crazy death. And I mentioned that that happened during the time of the judges. So Ruth and Boaz, their story also takes place in the time of the judges. So during this time in Israel, there was actually a famine in the land. This famine caused a man named Elimelech and his wife Naomi, who are both Israelites, to leave the land and go to Moab in order to find food and shelter. Their two sons go ahead and go with them. And while everybody's residing in Moab's, well, wouldn't you know it, but these two brothers find wives. So these sons took Moabite women as their wives. One was named Orpah, and one was named, you guessed it, Ruth. But tragedy strikes. Naomi's husband, Elimelech, dies. And not only does he die, but so do his two sons. So after about a decade in the land of Moab, here Naomi is no husband, no sons, and she's left with her two Moabite daughter-in-laws. So Naomi and her daughter-in-law hear through the grapevine that, guess what? The Lord has remembered his people and he's providing them food. So they all decide that they're going to set out and return back to Naomi's homeland. Now, Naomi looks at her two daughter-in-laws and she says, listen, obviously, like, I can't offer you new husbands. Both of you should each go back to your mother's house, and I hope that God blesses you because you've been a blessing to me, and I hope that he gives you a new husband and a new family. And they're all saying their goodbyes, and they're crying super loud because these women, like, really love each other. They've gone through some horrible tragedies together, and they are bonded. And both of them are like, hello? No, like, we love you and we're staying with you. And of course, Naomi is like, you see any other sons that I can give you? No, like, there's literally nothing that I can do for you. Y'all need to just start fresh, start a new chapter without me. She's like, to be honest with y'all, I'm like really too old to get a new husband. And even if I had the thought of getting another husband, I can't have children. And then what would you do? Like, wait for them to grow up? Like, that, none of this is making any sense. You guys just need to start fresh. So again, they're weeping really loudly. Orpah, which is one of her daughter-in-laws, kisses Naomi goodbye and she sets out to start her new chapter. But Ruth clings to Naomi. And actually, Ruth delivers one of the most precious vows in the Old Testament to Naomi. It's actually used in a lot of weddings. And I always giggle because I'm like, actually, dude, I know that you guys are saying that as husband and wife. And I think that's like so cool. But it always kind of makes me giggle that it's between a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law and not necessarily a husband and a wife. But it's so touching that I'm going to read it. Naomi looks at Ruth and is like, follow in the steps of your sister-in-law, go. And Ruth says this, don't plead with me to abandon you or to return and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. And wherever you live, I will live. And your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me and do so severely if anything but death separates you and me. So Ruth's decision in this moment is crazy important. Not only because she's choosing to follow her mother-in-law, but she's choosing to follow the one true God in this moment. She tells Naomi, your people, my people. Your customs are going to be my customs. Your traditions are going to be my traditions. The God that you follow, I will now follow. Your God is my God. And that, big commitment, guys. Big commitment. So when she gets back to her hometown, everybody's looking like, oh my gosh, is this Naomi? Like, we haven't seen her in ages. Bro, how are you doing? And obviously, Naomi has been through a lot at this point. She's lost her husband. She's lost her 2 sons. Now she's got to figure out how to take care of not only her, but her daughter-in-law. And she's coming back to all of these people who have been wondering what she's been doing and where she's been at for all these years. So, a lot of emotions, probably really overwhelming. She says, don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara, okay? And quite literally, everybody around her, plus God, is like, no. Mara actually means bitter. So she's trying to tell everybody, like, I'm not the same girl that you knew before, okay? I've been through some things, and I'm not happy about it. But nobody lets the bitterness stick, okay? Literally. Nobody ever calls her Mara. They're like, girl, better days ahead, okay? You're Naomi. Stick to that. She was obviously super bitter in this moment. Like, I totally get that, but I think there's a really important lesson there. You can't let circumstances or emotion transform your identity into something that God did not intend. I think if God had intended for that bitterness to last for the rest of her life, we would only be referring to her as Mara, and clearly we're not. The whole book, after that line, still calls her Naomi. I mean, like, imagine the issues we would have if at every bad emotion or even every good emotion, we changed our identity to suit that. Like, Naomi's super bitter right now. She wants to be called Mara, which means bitter. Like, what? When she's joyful, is she going to change her name again? Like, that would be a really, really crazy life to live. We can't just transform our whole identities based on very fleeting emotions and very fleeting circumstances. So the funniest part to me is that after all of that, the author's just like, and so then Naomi, blah, 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 blah. Like, he doesn't call her Mara because he knows that she's trying to change her identity based on an emotion that she's feeling in that current moment. It doesn't matter that Naomi chose to identify as bitter or as Mara, because that's not what God intended for her in the long run. It's really, really dangerous when you try to change your identity based on a very fleeting emotion, or honestly, based on emotions, period, because they change. You know what doesn't change? God. So if you're going to find your identity in anything, you might as well find your identity in something that's constant. Now, Naomi has a relative on her husband's side who just so happened to be a very prominent man in the community named Boaz. So obviously, Ruth and Naomi at this point getting kind of hungry. So Ruth asked Naomi if she would allow her to go into the fields and pick up the fallen grain behind somebody who finds favor with her. Also, it's one thing to note here that when the Israelites were harvesting their food, anything that fell to the ground they left, and oftentimes they left out like the very, very slivers of the edge of like the field. They wouldn't pick those grains because traditionally you left that to people who were poorer than you were so that they could keep their integrity but also harvest like their own grain for their own bread, which, and let's be so for real, God has such a big heart, and I always think it's so incredible just to like sit and realize how he thought to establish all of these little things in order to like restore integrity. So Naomi tells her, go ahead, girl, we got to eat. And so Ruth just so happens to find herself in the portion of a field that belongs to Boaz. So Boaz pulls up to the scene and he looks at all his harvesters who are working for him, like gathering this grain, working out in the fields, like they've had some hard days. He pulls up and he's like, may the Lord bless y'all. And then they're all, right back at you, brother. May the Lord bless you. Already A+ employer. If my boss is walking into my place of work, sees me working hard, and is like, the Lord bless you, girl, and right back at you. Okay. Already in my eyes, we got a top dog employer here. So out of the corner of his eye, Boaz sees a new face, a young woman he's never seen before. And he turns to one of his servants and he's like, whose is she? Where's she from? Give me all the details. So the servant is all, "Oh, yeah, no, that's that Moabite chick. She came back with Naomi. She asked if she could like follow behind us and like pick up the fallen grain and stuff for her and her mother-in-law." And so we just told her, "Yeah, she's been here since like the crack of dawn." Literally, she's been on her feet all day. She took like one teeny tiny break, but the girl is working. So then Boaz goes up to Ruth and he's like, "Listen, do not go into any other field. Okay. You're fine right here. I want you to hang around my female servants, follow in their footsteps, follow their lead, do what they're doing. They're going to take care of you." I've actually told my guys, they're not touching you. They're not looking at you. Okay. And you know what? If you get tired, if you feel a little lightheaded, dizzy in the sun, my guys have filled up some water jugs. Okay. You just take a sip. Okay. They are there for you too. By all means, like, we're going to get you taken care of. But do not go into another field. You are fine right here. And ladies, if you're looking for a good guy, you need to be looking for the one that protects you and provides for you. Okay. I don't care that he can serenade you with a guitar. I don't care how good looking he is. I don't care what kind of car he drives. I don't care if he is the prince of some tropical paradise. Okay. You find somebody who provides for you, who protects you, and who keeps you safe and well taken care of. So Ruth falls face down on the ground in front of him, and she's like, "What in the world have I done to earn this kind of favor with you? Seriously, I'm not understanding any of this. I can't wrap my brain around it." So Boaz looks and is like, "Everything that you've done for your mother-in-law, like, I have a full report of it, okay? I know everything I need to know. I know that you left your father and your mother's house to be with your mother-in-law and take care of her after her husband died and after your husband died. I know that you've come to a strange land that you don't know, and you're doing your best to pick up the customs and the tradition. I know that you've chosen to follow the one true God after your mother-in-law. And you know what? May the Lord reward you for that, because you've come under his wings and he's going to provide for you." You know what, man? Thank you. This means a lot to me that I'm not even one of your female servants, and you've like really comforted me and really, really encouraged me. That that means the world. So at mealtime, Boaz is like, "Ruth, come on over, have a seat at the table. Here's some bread, here's some vinegar sauce, like, eat up." And he offers her a spot at the table with the rest of the harvesters. And she ate and she got full, and there was even some leftovers. Like, I'm telling you, he is taking care of her. And you know what? At this point, I don't even think that he's taking care of her because he's like, "Oh, like, she's hot, she's new, like, let me make a move." By all means, like, we don't, scripture does not say that. Scripture does not like, and Boaz had the hots for Ruth, and that's why he's treating her like so incredibly well. No, like, he's literally just a good guy. Like, he sees this girl, she's trying her best to do some really hard work to take care of herself and to take care of her mother-in-law. They've been through unimaginable tragedy. And not only that, but Ruth herself is just in a very, very new place with new people and new traditions and customs and a new God. And like, things are a little crazy for her. And I genuinely think he's just like, "Yeah, no, if I can help her out, I'm going to help her out." Because that's just the kind of guy he is. We've already seen him provide for her, protect her. We've seen him comfort her, and we've seen him encourage her. And on top of that, he's looking at all the rest of his harvesters and being like, "May the Lord be with y'all." Okay. That's just the kind of guy he is. And he gets even kinder because as everybody is getting up to go back to harvesting, Boaz pulls some of his servants aside and is like, "Hey guys, okay, I want you to leave a good portion, a good chunk behind for Ruth. Don't humiliate her. I want her to feel like she's part of the crew. So just as you're harvesting, leave a little sliver for her so that she can do this with integrity. Pull out some of the stalks from the bundles and don't rebuke her when she goes to harvest it. Okay, just leave it for her." So Ruth is gathering grain until the evening. And when she comes home, she figures out she's got like 26 quarts of barley. And when she comes home, her mother-in-law is like, "Ruth, where did you harvest at today? Whose field were you in? Like, it's kind of a crazy amount of barley we got going on here." And then Ruth goes, "Oh, well, the man that I work for today, his name was Boaz." And Naomi is like, "Boaz? Like, Boaz, Boaz?" Not broke ass, crazy ass, lazy ass, Boaz. You worked for Boaz. Okay, this guy's a close relative, and he's actually one of our family redeemers. So let's take a pause here. What is a family redeemer? Obviously, traditions and customs and laws were way, way different back in the times of ancient Israel. When a man died, it kind of left things really up in the air for like his wife, his children, his property, his belongings, all that good stuff. So when a husband died, a close relative of that husband could come in, acquire the property, marry his widow, keep the family name going, and make sure that all of his assets and his lineage were going to be well taken care of and continued. And here Naomi is telling Ruth, this guy, need to keep an eye on him because he's a family redeemer. So Ruth is like, oh, okay, well, I mean, he did say for me to stay with him until the harvest was over, so I guess I'll do that. So, and Naomi's like, yeah, sister, that's exactly what you're going to do. You stay in his field, you stay with his female servant so that nothing happens to you, and you work until the harvest is over. After a little time passes, Naomi comes to Ruth and she's like, my daughter, shouldn't I find some rest for you? Like, you have been working so hard, and I just want to ensure that you're going to be taken care of. And now, isn't your boss Boaz our family redeemer? Haven't you made a good impression on him by being so hardworking and working with his female servants? Actually, I heard that this evening Boaz was going to be in the threshing room, and he's probably going to be there pretty late because it's the end of harvest and he's got a lot of work to do. So why don't you wash up and go put on some really good perfume and some really good oil and wear your best clothes. Yeah, wear your nicest set of clothes. I think you should go down to the threshing room, okay? And stay there, but don't mention that you're there until after he's finished eating and drinking. And when he lies down for the night, take a quick nap for all the work he's doing. You should uncover his feet. Bring the dogs out. Let them bark a little bit, and you should lay at his feet. And from there, he'll tell you what to do. So Ruth is just like, okay, bet. Like, I'll do that. And so she went down to the threshing room floor, and Boaz, after he had finished eating and drinking, he was in very good spirits, and he went down to take his nap. And Ruth comes in, uncovers his feet, and just lays there. Now, I will note that some scholars do, in fact, believe that it wasn't his feet she was uncovering. How do I put this politely? Some scholars would say that she uncovered a little friend of his below the belt, if you catch my drift. And that was kind of the signal of like, hey man, here I am. Personally, I do in fact think that she uncovered his feet just because later in the story, feet are going to come back up. So to me, it makes more logical sense that she really did just like wiggle the toes a little bit. That, and also throughout the book, Ruth is described very well, like as in she has a good character and she is a very noble woman. And I mean, like, I could be wrong, but that doesn't seem very noble to me. Okay, for him to be laying there passed out and her, be unbuckling the belt, so to speak. No, what I genuinely do think that she, lifted up the covers, kind of said, this little piggy went to market, this little piggy went home, this little piggy went wee, 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 all the way home, and just laid at his feet. And so at midnight, Boaz rolls over, wakes himself up, looks at his feet, and is like, oh, there's a girl. When, okay, so who are you exactly? And so Ruth like pops her head up and she's like, hey, it's Ruth. Why don't you take me under your wing? Because you're one of my family redeemers. So what do you say? What do you think? And so here's, I think, where I struggle. I said at the top of the episode, like, people are always like, wait for your Boaz. Wait, you could literally be a Christian for 0.2 seconds and somebody's going to look at you and be like, wait for your Boaz. And so here is my issue with that. Yes, Boaz initially like provided a very safe place for her, provided her with food and a job, and like made sure that she was safe while doing her job. However, when it comes to making like a romantic-esque move, it's Ruth. Actually, it's kind of prompted by Naomi, but the move was still made by Ruth. Okay. So, like, yeah, you can wait for your Boaz, but like, here, Ruth to me is the one being like, hey, I see you, you see me. I think maybe a good thing could happen here. She is the one who's making the move. Does that make sense? And let me tell you, Boaz, yeah. Oh, he's down. Okay. He's like, actually, you have shown me so much kindness because you could have pursued somebody who, for richer or for poorer, was a lot younger than me. Pause here. Okay. Boaz literally admits that Ruth is the one pursuing him. So, ladies, I know that you want to wait for your Boaz, but in this story, Ruth is the one pursuing him. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to leave it at that. Anyway, back to the story. Boaz is like, I'm going to do whatever you say because all the people in this town know that you are a woman of noble character. And again, that's why I think it was legitimately his feet. Like it was his dogs. I feel it in my bones. Like she let the dogs out for a minute. And he says, you know what, girl? Yes, it is true that I'm your family redeemer. However, there's a relative that's even closer kin to you than I am. So just stay here tonight. And in the morning, I'm going to check in with him. And if he wants to redeem you, then that's his right. And I will let him redeem you. But if he doesn't, girl, you got me. You got me. He literally is like, if he doesn't redeem you as the Lord lives, I will. Okay. All right. Okay. We see you, Boaz. We see you. She lays back down at his feet. Must have been pretty comfy. They must have not been too smelly. And goes to bed. Then Boaz is like, okay, we can't let it be known that a woman slept in the threshing room. So we're going to have to sneak you out. But before we do, let me send you on your way with some barley for you and your mother-in-law. So he sent her away with 6 measures of barley. So when Ruth gets home, Naomi is like, spill, girl, let's debrief. What happened? And Ruth gives her every detail. And Ruth is also like, plus, he gave me some more barley because he did not want me to go home to my mother-in-law empty-handed. Oh, and Naomi, she's eating this up, okay? She is like, girl, just you wait. He is not going to rest until he resolves this. He will resolve it today, okay? This is going to be good. And I mean, hello, what a mighty good man who he ain't wasting no time, okay? This girl is like, I'm down. And he's like, let's get this figured out, okay, today. So Boaz goes to the gate of the town and he sits down. He's waiting because at some point or another, this other closer family redeemer is going to walk by. And sure enough, he does. So Boaz looks is like, come over here, brother. Let's have a chat. And he sits down this family redeemer. He also sits down 10 of the town elders because he needs some witnesses to what's about to happen. So he looks at the closer family redeemer and he's like, all right, brother. So Naomi has returned. Okay. Her husband, not with us anymore. And she's going to sell the portion of the field that belonged to Amalek. And I thought that I should inform you as their closer relative. And I thought I should inform you in front of all the elders that you can buy it back in everyone's presence here. He says, if you want to redeem it and if you want the field, do it. But if you don't, inform me because, well, I would want it. I'm next in line. So, of course, this guy's like, bro, yeah, I want the land. Like, I want to redeem it. And Boaz is like, great. Okay, well, so the day that you acquire the field, you're also going to acquire Ruth the Moabite. And it'll be your job to perpetuate the man's name on his property. Meaning, not only do you get the land, but you're going to get a wife and you're very quickly going to have some babies. Now, what I'm thinking is that this closer relative probably already has a wife and a family because he looks at Boaz and he's like, yeah, so never mind. That is going to ruin my own inheritance if I take a wife and then have kids. It's going to kind of throw a wrench in my own plans. So she's all yours, bro. It's all yours. So then we get a little history lesson. And apparently, at an earlier point in Israel, it was custom to take off one's sandal and give it to the other party of an agreement, and that would make the agreement legally binding, specifically concerning the right of redemption or the exchange of property. So the Redeemer removed his sandal and gave it to Boaz and said, dude, buy it back yourself. And again, this is like the second mention of feet in this story, which makes me think that, Ruth really did uncover his feet. So Boaz looks at the other Redeemer and looks at the 10 other elders that he set down as witnesses and was like, okay, y'all saw it and heard it here first. Like, I'm acquiring all of this property and I'm acquiring Ruth, the Moabite, and I'm going to perpetuate this man's name on his property so that his lineage will not die out. His name is not going to disappear. And you guys are all witness to that. And everybody there was like, you know what, bro? Yeah, you're right. We saw it. We heard it. We're here. We're witnesses. And then they said, you know what? May the Lord make your new woman just like Rachel and Leah. And if you didn't know it, Rachel and Leah were Jacob, aka Israel's 2 wives, who had, between them and their handmaidens had the 12 sons that would become the 12 tribes of Israel. So they're basically saying, man, I hope your new woman is a fertile turtle, okay? I hope she is cranking some babies out. And may you guys have a great life, okay? Like, we're all really happy for you, brother. And you got to remember, too, at like so many points in history, Israel and Judah were enemies with Moab. So the fact that they're like, man, we're so happy that you're marrying this chick, and we just hope that you guys have the most blessed lives and the most blessed children. Come on. From literally technically an enemy to as blessed as Rachel and Leah. That's the kind of redemption my God does. That is the kind of redeemer that my God is. Let me just say that. So Boaz took Ruth as his wife, and they slept together, and they conceived, and the Lord gave them a son. And then all the women of the town come to Naomi, and they're like, how blessed are you that God did not leave you without a family redeemer? He will renew your life, and he's going to sustain you. And you know what? This daughter-in-law that he's given you, well, she's better than 7 sons. Are we kidding? And when Ruth and Boaz's baby is born, Naomi sits him on her lap, and all of the women of the town has said, you know what? A son has been born to Naomi. And they named him Obed. And Obed thereafter became the father of Jesse, who became the father of David. None other than King David. Yeah, that guy. So yeah, this story is about a family redeemer, but above all, it's about God, the Redeemer. God took this Moabite woman and redeemed her to the point that her, son, grandson, her great-grandson becomes the king of Israel, okay? That is insane. I mean, God really can work it all out for the good. Ruth was a foreign woman. She was a widow. She was facing a famine. She followed her mother-in-law to a foreign land with no guarantee of success, no guarantee of a good future. Boaz was a single older man. And I mean, he had wealth for sure, but he had a lot of love to give and nobody to give it to. And I'm positive each of their paths was just riddled with strife and trials and turmoil. And yet God orchestrated every single part of their suffering, every single part of their story to not only bring them together and redeem a family, but to redeem the world through the line of David that would eventually lead to Jesus. So this is a love story, but not even really in a romantic sense, but really it's a piece of God's plan to save the world through the love and through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. And yeah, this is a really good love story, but because it points back to the greatest love story the world has ever known. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Ken Ray B. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Substack, and YouTube at Ken Ray B. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for listening.